from different venues uh, commenting on sea level rise versus I can remember one time, Mr. Mill, it seems like we were the only ones, you and council was the only one talking about that. Now I'm hearing it from Mount Pleasant, I'm hearing it from the county. You're hearing it from different stakeholders in the
That's
region.
Is the Army Corps talking about it finally?
something like 3x3. I'm not sure what that means.
Well, I wish they would talk more about sea level rise, less about storm surge, but that's for another workshop.
Listen,
Yeah.
guys, I've been saying it's the water stupid since I got on council.
Yeah, it is the water.
It's all about the water.
Can we blame you about that, Councilman?
Yeah, you're finally right, council member.
Finally, it took all these years.
I
Oh,
tell
uh,
you,
uh,
anytime-
Enough fun. I'm going to call this city council budget workshop to order, and we're going to hear about the budget. The only opening remarks I have, and they're all been acknowledged by email with council members, is to thank our budget and finance staff led by the incomparable Amy Wharton in keeping our city's revered AAA credit rating with Moody's and Standard & Poor. It really is a remarkable achievement in this year of COVID-19 with the budgetary impacts that we've had. And and Councilmember Waring was commenting on this morning at the Charleston Water Service board meeting, who also enjoys a AAA credit rating, somewhat in thanks, I think, to the city of Charleston, but also because of their own fine efforts. Collectively, in the last year, between just the city and Charleston Water refinancing some bonds, we've saved our citizens well over $20 million, maybe even double that, because the water service had a bunch of bonds that they were able to refinance just timing wise. So those ratings really mean something to us in our city. And so I've said it before, so I say it one more time. Thank you, Amy, and thank you to all of your staff for your incredible work on that. So with that being said, I guess I skipped over having a moment of silence. I'll ask you to join me in a moment of silence as we pray for our stewardship of our great city going forward. Amen. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to go right ahead and turn this over to Amy to give us an update on both this year's budget, which was recently amended, and next year's budget. Amy?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So just real quick, because tonight, second and third reading of the amendment to the 2020 budget is on the agenda. So I just wanted to talk about 2020 real quick that will lead us into 2021 and the issues that were happening in 2021. So the amendment tonight will take into consideration all the reductions and the transfers in from the tourism funds and the.
Is anybody else having problems hearing Amy besides me?
Hold on, this is what happens every time. Is that better? A little better?
It's a little bit better. Yeah, it's a little better.
Yes.
Okay, so now
Maybe slow down just a little bit.
Slow down, please.
okay, I just lost my, okay.
And if everyone could if everyone who isn't talking, if they could stay on mute, that will cut down on the background noise.
Thank you for that reminder.
If I need to open up my computer, I can. I didn't think to do that like I did the last time, so just let me know. But the reductions in the tourism funds, and also we had a reduction in loss and franchise fees, and also the issue that we're having with our enterprise funds as well. We had an anticipated overage in property taxes and business license fees that the amendment takes into consideration, and also the $12 million reduction in expenditures that we all the departments we went through and cut. We had to use $2.3 million in fund balance, But we also have reallocated 2.5 from assigned fund balance to unassigned. So we're still at the end of 2020, as it looks right now, have a 25% unassigned fund balance, which is over our 20%. I'm trying to keep that up a little bit higher than what we normally do because we're going to need probably a little bit of that in 2021, which you'll see towards the end of the slides. So this is what the revenues look like for the amendment that is going, like I said, second and third reading tonight. So we went from 195 million in revenues to 100 and almost 94 million. We had, like I said, property taxes and business licenses helped us a lot this year with that. Expenditures, there's a $12 million reduction that we had, went from 206 million approved budget to 193.8 million. And then enterprise funds, that's where we took a $13 million hit in revenues and cut $2.6 million. And we had that $11 million that helped us balance the budget for 2020 to begin with, that we had to kind of cover because the enterprise funds could not provide that to us. So that was a lot of our general fund issue that we have for 2020. Do you have any questions on that? Councilman Shade, you're on mute.
Can you go back to that screen that had the breakdown on the expenses and income revised? One more back. The
This one?
overall screen. One more, I think.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's it. So that you're adjusting our income at 1.93 million, 193 million.
Right. 193 for total expenses, yes, 193.8 from 206.
We're short $11 million.
Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you.
Amy, Amy, back to that screen. The salary savings of 7 million.
Mhm.
The majority of that those positions just were budgeted but never filled.
That's right. So that's what happened with the hiring freeze that we implemented. So we originally had $4.2 million budgeted for salary savings. With the hiring freeze, that was what added the additional 7 million.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So that's what we did to balance. We implemented the hiring freeze and we cut expenses. And I talked about the $11 million surplus from enterprise funds that we had originally used to balance the budget, and then how we had to cover that in addition to some of the tourism transfers in as well. And you'll see we'll have that same issue for 2021 as well. So we'll start talking about the 2021 projected revenues. Right now, we're at $186 million in projected revenues. And those are the different categories, obviously. Business licenses, when we met with ad hoc last week, our business license staff went in and did a deep dive into it a little bit and really looked at each of the areas in the city and which businesses we were losing the most and kind of adjusted the number a little bit. So we were at, I think, 27.6 million as revenue. We upped that a little bit to $30 million for business licenses. So that helped a little bit because we were at an $18 million loss last week when we talked with ad hoc. Still see where we are when we get a little further. Everybody good? So property taxes is 74.3 mils as determined with 2020 reassessment rollback calculation, which we talked about last council meeting when I did that other presentation. That's a decrease of 5.3 mils as compared to 2019, and then includes the tax credit factor that with using the reduced loss projections. Our growth rates for Charleston County, 2% for vehicles and 3% for other property. Berkeley County growth rate, 0% for vehicles and 5% for all other property. And it's a $4.88 million value or estimate over 2020.
Amy, those growth rates are based upon projections or?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So why would there be zero growth rate in Berkeley
I don't
County?
really understand that, to be honest with you, but that's what we've been seeing in Berkeley County for motor vehicles for the last couple of years, where the growth rate is very nominal. So I just did a property tax revenue comparison. Well, I didn't, Kathy did it, but because one of the ad hoc meetings, you're talking about the assessed values and how they increase, and it doesn't always jive with how much our property tax revenue is. So we just did this comparison over the last few years. And you see in 2021, some of the reason why we're not seeing as much of the increase in revenue is because TIF districts. So it jumped up a lot. $6.3 million will come out of our, just because they're allocated directly to our TIF district. So sometimes there's a lot of variables that go into how we calculate our property tax projections. I don't know if you have any questions on that or not. Because I know Councilmember Waring had the question in terms of how can our revenue projection be so much lower with reassessment and everything. So that's some of the reason why.
Yeah, what I wanted to do, Amy, was kind of, I guess, separate out what was growth, I guess, from year to year, average growth from year to year, and then plus, I guess, any additional revenues that would come from, reassessment.
So we have, for this latest reassessment, Councilmember, if you look down here, out of that 191.9 assessed value, 130 was reassessment and almost 62 was growth. You can go back and do the other years if you'd like us to.
No, that's, thank you.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
And so then business licenses, we had talked about by category, how we calculated the reduction, and we went back through. So this is really where the reductions lie for all of the different categories of business license fees, with the highest being obviously hospitality and personal services, retail, wholesale, and professional. Those are the amounts of reductions in revenues that we calculated. And it's a $6.7 million reduction from the 2020 budget.
Amy, is that different from what y'all had?
It's
projected?
just a little bit different because we were seeing 50% in hospitality and all of that. So some of those numbers did reduce. I can give you the comparison later, Mayor, if you'd like. I can bring that to ad hoc on Thursday if you'd like to see what the differences are.
And I meant to ask you, when you had the chart up about our revenues for next year, the state of South Carolina, I think, said 23 million.
Mm-hmm.
Are you, I bet you're not, but are you including any potential reimbursement from the CARES Act either this year or next year? Or are we just going to recognize that if and when we receive it?
We'll recognize it when we receive it. Right now, what we asked for from CARES was around $300,000 and $40,000 from FEMA. So it's not a significant amount of money. And I know we have to do that second round by November 15th, which we need to work on as well.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So permits and fees, we also obviously have been seeing some reductions in Uber and Lyft. So we reduced that from $250,000 to $175,000 for 2021. Municipal court fees, we reduced that income, worked with Lakeisha a lot on that. So it's just a minor reduction in those fees. Carriage medallion fees, same. Tourism, it's just what it is right now. We feel the reduction will be in the carriage medallion fees, working with Dan Riccio's folks. And then we assume some impact from potential recession due to the pandemic too, and building permits. So there's a reduction there. And then obviously tourism permits as well. Any questions? And then enterprise funds, most facilities, we projected a full year of operations with no shutdowns. So that's what we're hoping for, but with less visitation, just because of the way things are right now. We talked about the golf course fees and the projections. They were all presented to you in a prior workshop. Parking, we looked at 2019 for normal operating revenues and compared it to 2020 to see the percentage of 19 revenue that we're receiving each month in 2020 and kind of based it off of that for 2021 in terms of how much revenue we think that we'll get for each of those months. And that's how we came up with those projections. So enterprise funds, we're at about $34 million. Said last year we were at about 42 when we budgeted, so we're down pretty significantly for our enterprise funds. Most of that being parking, obviously. And then expenditures.
One quick question, Amy, on the baseball park. Has there been any discussion at all about minor league clubs resuming play next year at all?
I have not heard anything. I don't know. I haven't heard anything from Dave in a while, so I'm not sure. Councilmember Shane.
I haven't heard anything either.
I don't think anybody's heard, Amy.
Okay. And then projected revenues. When we first received the departmental request, we were at $208 million, and knowing that we were seeing the decrease in revenues that we asked them to cut 10%. Departments came back and cut 1.6 million, and then we cut an additional 4.4. There was some high priority requests that we added back in, but in looking at this, we're going back through those and going back through those to see if there might be some of those that we need to cut. So right now our expenditure budget is 205 million. And it looks like this. That's the base budget that we originally had. And then all the cuts, the high priority requests that we added back in. So we're at 206 million, actually. We added insurance at the last minute and I did change those numbers on my slide, so I'm sorry. So right now, looking at this, we're at a $20 million deficit. Enterprise fund expenses, we're ending up with a modest surplus in enterprise funds of $4 million based on what we're looking at now. And then just to kind of go over some citywide expenditures, because we always talk about those fact of life increases. Right now, this budget includes no COLA. The hiring freeze will continue into 2021, and it also does not include any increases to minimum wage. Professional services and contracts increased by about 472,000 because of the new garbage trash collection contracts. One of them has been awarded, the other one has not. I think the selection committee will be meeting soon to select that contractor for West Ashley and Johns Island. Fringe benefits, the state, always had that 1% increase per year through 2023. I said they forgave it. That's probably not the best word. They stalled it, I should say, in 2020. We're really not sure what they're going to do for 2021, so we budgeted for the increase just to be on the safe side. Healthcare increased 1.1 million. General insurance kind of killed us this year as well, 27.6 increase in premiums. That's about a $900,000 increase. A lot of that is tort liability premiums, which increased by 50% for police officers and 25% for everyone else. And that was more than half of that increase. I have the number here. Yes, so $575,000 of that 900,000 increase was because of tort liability.
Amy, what are they basing that justification for going up 50% for police officers?
I think just on what's going on in the country right now.
So no matter what's happened in your local community, this is just a broad brush premium increase. That is just an amazing amount for them to jump that high up there.
Yeah.
But what about the 25% for all other employees? I mean, what's happened to justify that? I'm
not really sure, Councilmember Shade. I can have we can look into that a little bit more. But yeah, almost $576,000 of that 900,000 was just for tort liability. That just seems like a huge increase for no particular reason. I mean, I can understand the police officer part of it, but other employees. Okay, thank you. Lease purchase, we actually cut lease purchase back a lot this year. Last year we had increased it a lot, just trying to get caught up on some of our outdated fleet. So we reduced the 3-year lease by 300,000 from 2020. Those are our police vehicles. We talked with them, and 1.3 million is what we will do for 2021. 4-year lease, we are not borrowing anything for regular fleet, and I'll explain why. Environmental services is 725,000. Fire is 2.8 for the apparatus that we need to get, and information technology at 580,000. We're borrowing almost 5.5 million, which is a decrease of almost 3.6 million from 2020. So what we did, we have savings from the 2018 and 2019 lease purchase borrowings. So we're utilizing those savings to purchase regular fleet replacements rather than putting it on lease purchase in 2021. And the same with IT. And then you'll see tonight on the agenda, the fire department is purchasing a used fire truck as one of the reserve trucks. They're actually selling one and purchasing this one that is better for their needs. So we should get some revenue from that, some proceeds from the truck that we're selling. So we're going to use those funds to buy some of their lighter duty vehicles rather than putting those on lease purchase. So that was a way for us to reduce our lease purchase borrowing for 2021. Anybody have any questions on that?
Yes, Amy, it's Carol. Sorry, I don't have my video on.
Okay.
Is the outright purchase, is that something new? When was the last time you think the city did that as opposed to the lease purchase?
We do that sometimes, especially with stormwater, because they have their own revenue source, you know, so we'll buy things outright if it makes more sense to do that. You know, obviously for the larger dollar, like fire trucks, it's better to do on lease purchase. But if we have the opportunity to go ahead and just buy them outright, we can do that, and it will save us a debt payment for the next few years, because I feel like this is going to be at least a 3-year problem, not a 1-year problem. So it'll help us going forward as well.
And then do we get to depreciate, or how do we end up, taking them off the books once we just sell?
I'm sorry, because the
So
doorbell thing,
if we own equipment or vehicles outright, do we depreciate them? Is that allowed?
Yes. We do. And then we can sell them. Same with lease, for anything on lease purchase, it's the same thing. We own them, so we can sell them outright after. So debt increase, we have debt service increase 981,000 from 2020. 466,000 of that is interest expense for the van, the TAN, the new IPRB, and for the CTC parking garage. And then the remainder is just increases in principal and interest expense on current bonds. This budget also does not include any community assistance grants. We had talked about that before, that if there were a way for us to incorporate that in, we would, but I don't see how we'd possibly be able to do that at this point. So our preliminary 2021 draft budget kind of looks like this. You've seen all the separate categories for revenues and expenses. It just won't fit on the slide if I put them all in there. So $20 million deficit in general fund. We add the enterprise funds in, so we're at about a $16 million deficit right now. So what are we going to do? Like I said, $16 million deficit, ad hoc budget committee meeting on Thursday. So we have a lot to do. Items to discuss to kind of whittle this down that we have discussed, and we'll talk about more on Thursday, is the local option sales tax, not giving 100% of that back. If we kept 25% and gave 75% back, that would produce an approximate $2 million in additional revenue. 50% of the revenue, rolling back 50% would produce approximately $4.1 million in additional revenue. And I included those calculations because I know you guys like to see what that will do to a property tax bill. So that's Charleston County. 75% it would increase at by $21, and then 50% would increase by $45 on an average on a $300,000 home. And then Berkeley County, $10.80 and $21.60. And then another option, because our problem right now is revenues. It's not necessarily expenditures. We've cut a lot in expenditures where if we cut any more, then we're going to impact services without a doubt. So as you can see with the enterprise funds, normally that would help the general fund a lot. It's just not able to do that. So our problem is revenues more so than expenditures. So we also could do a straight millage increase. Everybody was asking me about what our millage bank is. Right now, a value of a mill for us is $1.6 million. It's gone up a little bit from last year. Millage bank, we could raise taxes by 3.6 mils, just to let you know that. And then that's what it would look like. And we did it kind of with both options, including local option sales tax and just a straight millage. So if we just increase millage, it'd be an increase of $38.40 if you did that whole full 3.6 mils. And then if you also added in the local option sales tax, those are the increases to somebody's property tax bill. Does that make sense?
Amy, this is Keith. So the impact would be less if we did millage versus.
Yeah, because if you just did a straight millage, like say you just raised 3.6 mils, which I know we won't do, I just gave you the full amount.
Right.
That would be a $38.40 increase to a Charleston County resident. But if you did that plus kept 25% of the local option sales tax, then their tax bill would increase by $59.40. And if you did where you increase millage and kept 50% of the local option sales tax, it would increase property taxes by $83.40.
Okay.
Okay, I try to give you all options.
Yeah, those tough options.
Yes. And then that would be Berkeley County.
Now, Amy, didn't we through reassessment, didn't we roll back our millage?
We did.
Remember the little
So
debate with the person?
That's the 74.3 mils right there. So
Right.
if you increase it by 3.6 mils, it would be 77.5 mils.
And that would almost equate what it was prior to reassessment?
So it was 79.6. And no, I'm talking straight operating. That doesn't include the 4 for drainage and 3 for public safety infrastructure. But yeah, so it was 79.6 before reassessment, rolled it back to 74.3. If we raise it 3.6, it would go to 77.5. Does that make sense?
It does. So it's still, again, prior to reassessment.
It's yes, you're right. It's still less than it was prior to reassessment.
Correct.
Yep.
That's good to know.
And then the other options, expenditure decreases. Like I said, I think we've cut departmental budgets as much as we can without impacting services. We've talked with recreation and looking at some programs and possibly reducing hours at facilities. Parks, they're looking through their professional services contracts right now to see where we might be able to cut back on some right-of-way maintenance and things like that. So we will have that information on Thursday for ad hoc. And then other options we would have is to reduce our hours in other facilities as well. The most unpopular is furloughs. 40 hours would save $2.2 million and 80 hours would save $4.4 million. And then, I don't know if you have any questions. The draft budget is due to you by November 17th. We have an ad hoc budget committee meeting on November 12th, which we plan to have the budget completed by that meeting. And then you're going to schedule another full council workshop the week of the 17th to present the final draft budget to you. So we've been doing that for the last few years. I'm assuming that you would want to still do that again this year. So we'll try to set something up with the clerk's office for that. And that's really all I have, unless you have questions.
Amy?
Yes.
Just to recap this, we're looking at a $16 million deficit.
Mm-hmm.
So in the two big items that we're looking at is this rollback on property taxes, which could save us as much as $4 million, and then neither of these options are we're happy with, and then the furlough, the most you get out of that is $4 million.
Yeah,
so,
and that's 80 hours, and that's a lot.
It's 80 hours. Yeah,
that would be 80 hours.
But that just gives us half of the deficit. If we took those two extreme measures, we're still $8 million in the hole.
Mm-hmm. And so we have some fund balance that, because we've been trying to preserve over the 20% as much as we can. And so we could probably use around $6 million in fund balance and still be over our 20%. So we have that option, only because we've been trying every which way not to use it, knowing that 21 was going to be tough. But that will be the last time we could use fund balance. We're being pretty short on fund balance. And that was, I think, one of the reasons why I think that's probably one of the main reasons why we maintained our AAA, because I just had to show them all of our fund balance, even in tourism. They were very concerned of us being able to pay debt, and they were talking about giving us a negative outlook until we showed them exactly our debt payment plan and also all of the fund balances we have in tourism funds and our enterprise funds. So that really kind of saved us. So we need to preserve those as much as we can.
Amy, this is Dudley.
Yes.
The furlough wouldn't affect public safety, correct?
It will. Yes, that includes public safety. It would have to include all of every city employee.
Okay. At the risk of decreasing public safety, though?
Well, if you don't include public safety, you might as well not do a furlough, because it's most of the, it's a big portion of it.
Trust, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I understand clearly. The next question is, what would have been the amount for the minimum wage increase?
Well, we always try to do between 25 and 50 cents. So we probably would have done 13.25 or 13.50, I would imagine.
Okay.
We kind of look at that along with the COLA to see, where it puts us, and if there's any kind of issue in a pay grade, and adjust it that way. It's not an easy answer to give you necessarily.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Amy, this is Keith. How much do we spend in part-time employees?
I have that information well, I don't know if I have how much we spend. I can get that, but I have the number of temporary employees that we have. I can send that to you.
Okay,
I was going to send that to you before ad hoc on Thursday.
All right, good. That'll work. Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
We'll get the slides that you've just shown us, right, this week.
I'll send these slides, and then I'll also send everything for ad hoc as well on Thursday.
Thanks.
And everybody can join ad hoc if you'd like, obviously, on Thursday as well. It's at 3 o'clock.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
What have we considered selling off any of our real estate assets?
We have not, but that might be able to, if there were something to sell, then that would be a one-time expense that we could pay for that. You can't necessarily keep that for ongoing expenses.
Do we have like a list of all of the property that we own and what they're appraised at and that sort of thing, and how much we owe on those buildings?
Probably, yes. I mean, that's probably not a super fast thing that we can do, but we can give you something, yes.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we needed money, and obviously the furloughs are only going to create so much, maybe that's an option to look at some of our assets. Just don't ballparking that out there.
Hey, Amy, it's Rick. What would the impact of a potential federal stimulus package have on this? Assuming we got something.
So like I've said, obviously we pay fund balances back first.
Okay.
And then, whatever, so it could be some of the requests that the departments asked for that are one-time expenses that we weren't able to provide.
Right.
We can do that with those, but you can't use one-time revenue for ongoing expenses. So you don't want to build up your budget to a certain degree for ongoing expenses and expect the revenue that we have for 1 year, then you're going to be in the same situation next year because we won't have the revenue next year. So you really need to use it just for one-time things.
Right, but if indeed, say, for miraculously, Congress passed a stimulus bill before the end of this year and we got $20 million, we would apply that to the fund balance for 2020, which would increase that fund balance, which we then would be able to use to meet some of the deficits in 2021.
Right, but what I'm saying is you don't want to build your budget up so high with ongoing expenses that next year in 2022, you don't have the revenue to cover it. Then you're just going to have to cut it right back is what I guess my point is.
And Amy, this is Dudley. The same principle applies with regard to selling assets for reoccurring debt, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right?
All right, so Amy, I know we have a couple of other fee proposals. One was from the rights of way that Tracy and Keith Benjamin are working on. I don't know if you've included that. It was only about $400,000 or $500,000 a year, but at this point, every $500,000 a year, you know, helps. And I did ask her and ask you if there are any other fees in our allowable permitting fees or other fees that we could increase for next year. Boy, now would be time to look at it.
So we've increased the parking residential fees a little bit. I mean, it's not a huge amount, but we did include that in the budget, which I was going to go over a little bit more detail on Thursday. But the other fees we haven't because we didn't feel like they would be ready in time in order for us to include them in this budget. That's the last thing I have heard is that we really wouldn't have the package together to get everything and all the approvals that we would need in order to incorporate it into this budget.
Mm-hmm.
So that would just be gravy, I guess, for next year.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, good thoughts, suggestions?
Yeah, the bar is open.
Okay.
Well, one thing I'd like to say, Mr. Mayor, is Amy has really laid it out succinctly, you know, where the choices are to be made. And I certainly appreciate that. I don't think anybody's going to get off of this Zoom call thinking, you know, what do we need to do next? I mean, we know where the hard choices are. Decisions just have to be made.
Yep.
So thanks for the format that you've laid this out in.
Welcome.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to thank Amy for going through. It's a hard job. We got to make the tough decisions. It's going to be some tough decisions we have to make. And we just have to explain to the community and let them know this is tough times and tough decisions we have to do to keep the city operating. So I don't know what else we can be able to do unless someone drops some money down from the sky for us.
Yep.
Every year for the next 10 years.
All right, I heard all that. Any other thoughts or questions before we adjourn for our next meeting?
Thank you, Amy. Always a great job how you present this to us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, hearing none other, we will see y'all at 4:30 for our Ways and Means Committee. Terrific.